The transport shuttle descended through Ethon Prime's pearl-white clouds, and Jenna Torres pressed her face against the viewport like a child seeing snow for the first time. Below, the crystalline spires of Stellara Academy rose from gardens that seemed to float on mist, their architecture defying everything she understood about structural engineering. Then again, on a world where gravity was 60% of Earth's standard, maybe buildings could dream. First time off-world? The Centaurian pilot glanced back at her, his triple-jointed fingers dancing across the controls with practiced ease. That obvious? Jenna laughed, though butterflies were performing acrobatics in her stomach. 3 months ago, she'd been a dance major at Berkeley, choreographing pieces in a converted warehouse and serving coffee to make rent. Now she was humanity's first representative at the most prestigious performing arts academy in 7-star systems. No pressure. The shuttle settled onto the landing platform with barely a whisper. Jenna grabbed her bag stupidly. She'd packed way too much, not realizing how different weight would feel here, and stepped out into air that tasted like honey and electricity. The gravity shift hit her immediately. Her first step turned into an ungainly leap. Her second nearly sent her sprawling. And by the third, she was windmilling her arms, desperately trying not to faceplant in front of whoever was waiting to meet her strong hands, caught her elbows, steadying her with surprising gentleness. Easy now. Low-grav legs take time to develop. Jenna looked up into the most striking face she'd ever seen. The man person? Before her head skin that shimmered with an opalescent quality, shifting between silver and pale blue, depending on how the light caught it. His eyes were larger than human standard, colored like twilight, and his features held an otherworldly elegance that made her think of marble sculptures given breath. He wore flowing garments that seemed to move even when he stood still, marked with the silver triple spiral insignia of Stellara Academy. "I'm fine," she said quickly, finding her footing and immediately overcompensating, bouncing slightly. "Just need to calibrate." His expression remained carefully neutral, but she caught the flicker of something amusement, concern, in those unusual eyes. "I am Rian Velk, senior instructor of kinetic arts. Headmaster Vorn asked me to meet you. Asked or told?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. This time, definite amusement. Assigned would be more accurate. He released her arms, stepping back with fluid grace that made her hyper-aware of her own clumsy adjustments to the gravity. "Come, I'll show you to the residence halls. Try to walk normally. Fighting the gravity makes it worse." Easy for him to say. Rian moved like water, each step flowing into the next with unconscious artistry. Jenna followed, concentrating hard on not bouncing or stumbling, which meant she immediately did both. By the time they reached the academy's main entrance, a soaring archway carved from what looked like living crystal, she was sweating and frustrated. "This is impossible," she muttered. "This is Ethon Prime." Rian held the entrance open, a gesture that would have been courteous if his tone weren't quite so pointed. Standard gravity is 5.9 meters per second squared. Your Earth measures 9.8, I believe. You've spent your entire life moving under nearly twice our weight. Every muscle, every bone, every instinct you have is calibrated for a gravity that doesn't exist here. I know the numbers. Jenna stopped in the entrance hall, surrounded by walls that seemed to be made of compressed starlight, and fought down a wave of homesickness, so intense it hurt. "I studied Ethonian physiology for 6 months before applying. I know you evolved on a low-grav world. I know your bone density is different, your muscle composition, your entire cardiovascular system. I know all of it. Knowledge and adaptation are different things." Rian's voice had softened slightly, but his next words stung anyway. "I reviewed your application materials. Your dance technique is adequate for Earth standards. Here, the movements you've spent years perfecting will need to be entirely relearned. What you call a jump, we call a stumble. Your powerful movements will send you careening into walls. Your balance, I get it. She cut him off, chin lifting. You think this was a mistake? Letting a human into Stellara. He studied her for a long moment, those twilight eyes unreadable. Around them, other students flowed past in the hallways, and Jenna noticed how they moved not walking so much as gliding, their bodies in constant fluid motion, even when just heading to class. She felt like a toddler among ballet dancers. I think, Rian said carefully, that the admissions committee was optimistic about what 3 months of training could achieve. The Interstellar Arts Initiative is politically motivated, not pedagogically sound. And I think you're about to work harder than you've ever worked in your life, only to discover that hard work might not be enough. Something in Jenna's chest crystallized into determination. She'd heard variations of this speech before too short for ballet, wrong body type for contemporary, not refined enough for classical. Every doubt had become fuel. Show me to the practice halls. You just arrived. You need to show me. She met his gaze steadily, refusing to look away, even though something about his eyes made her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with the gravity. If I'm going to fail, I'd rather start failing immediately than waste time pretending I'm here for the cultural exchange. For the first time, Rian's carefully composed expression cracked into something that might have been respect, or possibly just resignation to dealing with a stubborn human. Very well. Follow me. And Jenna? He turned as he started walking, moving with that infuriating grace. Try not to break anything in your first hour. The insurance paperwork is extensive. The practice hall made Jenna's breath catch, despite her determination not to be impressed. The space was enormous, with ceilings that disappeared into some kind of artificial sky showing Ethon Prime's 3 moons. The floor wasn't solid. It rippled and shifted subtly, responding to weight and movement in ways she couldn't begin to understand. Bars lined the walls, but they seemed to float, unsupported by anything visible. A dozen students were already practicing, and Jenna stopped dead watching them move. This wasn't dance as she understood it. They didn't just leap, they soared, hanging in the air for seconds that defied physics, their bodies creating shapes impossible under Earth gravity. One student executed a spin that must have involved at least 7 rotations, landing with the delicacy of a falling leaf. Another seemed to run across the air itself, feet barely touching the responsive floor. Second-year kinetic arts students, Rian said beside her. They've been training here for 1 full Ethonian year. That's approximately 18 of your Earth months. They're beautiful, Jenna whispered, and meant it. They're adequate. Rian's tone was matter-of-fact. By 4th year, if they progress, they'll begin to approach actual artistry. Now, let's see what you can do. Basic warm-up. First position. Jenna moved to the center of the floor, aware of curious eyes turning her way. She'd done first position 10,000 times. Heels together, toes turned out, arms curved gently. Simple, foundational dot, she rose up on her toes and immediately rocketed upward, completely losing contact with the floor. For one horrifying moment, she was airborne and flailing, her body's muscle memory betraying her catastrophically. She came down hard for Ethon Prime, which meant she sort of drifted down while frantically trying to regain any sense of control, and stumbled backward 3 steps before catching herself on one of the floating bars. The bar moved. She yelped, overcorrected, and sat down hard on the responsive floor, which rippled around her like disturbed water. The practice hall had gone silent. Every student was staring at her now. Jenna felt heat flooding her face, could practically feel their thoughts. This is what Earth sent? This clumsy, graceless creature who can't even stand still without catastrophe. Rian appeared in her vision, crouching with that fluid ease that made her want to scream. His expression was carefully, professionally blank. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "we should start with something more basic. Learning to walk, for instance." The humiliation was complete. Jenna had performed in front of crowds, had competed nationally, had taught classes of rowdy teenagers without breaking a sweat. She'd never felt less capable, less graceful, less worthy of being called a dancer. "I can do this," she said, more to herself than to him. "Can you?" It wasn't cruel, exactly. Just realistic, which somehow felt worse. "Stand up, Jenna, slowly. Use half the force you think you need." She tried. She really did. But earth muscles didn't have a half-force setting after 22 years of practice. She pushed up gently. She thought and shot upward again, arms pinwheeling. This time Rian caught her, his hands steadier than they had any right to be, and guided her back to something approximating ground contact. "Class," he called out, not looking away from her. "Continue your warm-ups. Jenna, you're with me. Private instruction until you master basic locomotion. I don't need, you do." His voice was firm but not unkind. "And there's no shame in it. You're operating in an environment your body was never designed for. It would be like me attempting to dance on Jupiter. Impossible without extensive adaptation." The other students returned to their practice, though Jenna noticed more than a few continued to watch from the corners of their eyes. Rian kept his hands on her upper arms, steadying her. "Listen to me carefully," he said, his face closer to hers than she'd expected, those twilight eyes intense. "For the next week, possibly 2, you are going to feel incompetent. Every movement you've perfected will betray you. Your body will be a stranger. This is normal. This is expected." But he paused, and something shifted in his expression. "I've trained students from 14 different species. I've taught beings with 6 limbs, with no limbs, with body structures, so alien I needed xenobiology consultants. Every single one of them felt this same frustration, and every single one who pushed through it discovered something remarkable." "What?" Jenna asked, caught despite herself. "That limitation is the birthplace of creativity. That when your body can't do what it used to, it finds new ways. Ways you never imagined." His grip on her arms was warm, grounding. "So yes, you're going to fail. Repeatedly, spectacularly. But maybe, just maybe, that failure will teach you something none of us can." Something in his words, or maybe in the way he looked at her when he said them, made her chest tight. This wasn't pity. This was... what? Hope? Curiosity? "Now," Rian continued, professional mask sliding back into place as he released her, "let's start with breathing. Match your breath to Ethon Prime's rhythm. Feel the gravity, don't fight it. Let it teach you." And so they began. Not with dance, not with art, but with the simple, humbling act of learning to exist in a world that seemed determined to prove she didn't belong. What neither of them knew was that this was how it would be between them: constant calibration, gravity pulling them together and apart, learning a new language of movement that belonged to neither Earth nor Ethon Prime, but to something entirely their own. Rien Velk had been teaching at Stellara Academy for 8 years, and he'd developed certain convictions about his profession. Talent was visible within the first hour. Dedication showed itself within the first week, and impossible cases revealed themselves immediately, usually through injury, tears, or a polite request for transfer to a less demanding program. Jenna Torres was breaking all his carefully constructed rules. 2 weeks had passed since her catastrophic first day, and Rian found himself arriving early to the private practice hall he'd reserved for her remedial sessions. He told himself it was professional diligence. The human was his responsibility, after all. The first Earth student at Stellara represented not just her own planet, but the entire interstellar arts initiative. If she failed, it would reflect poorly on the Academy, on him, on the whole program. He told himself many things. None of them explained why his chest tightened when he opened the practice hall door and found her already there. Working alone in the pre-dawn light, she was attempting a basic relevrise to the balls of the feet, the most fundamental movement in any dance vocabulary. On Earth, she could probably do it in her sleep. Here, she'd been struggling for 14 days to manage it, without launching herself into an uncontrolled ascent. Rian stood in the doorway, unnoticed, and watched Dotchena rose up slowly, her face a mask of concentration. Her body lifted controlled, measured, and for 3 heartbeats she held the position. Then her heel dropped slightly, her weight shifted, and she began to tilt. Instead of flailing as she had that first day, she bent her knees and rolled through the stumble, converting disaster into a controlled descent that ended with her kneeling on the responsive floor. "Better," Rian said. Stepping inside, she jerked around, and even that motion sent her sliding slightly across the floor. "How long have you been watching?" "Long enough to see you've been practicing outside our scheduled sessions." He set down his teaching satchel and moved toward her with the unconscious grace that came from a lifetime in low gravity. "I told you to rest between our lessons. Your muscles need recovery time. Earth muscles recover faster than Ethonian ones." She stood carefully, using about 60% of the force she'd have used 2 weeks ago. Progress. Higher gravity means denser muscle fiber. We're built for endurance. You've been reading xenophysiology texts. I've been reading everything. She pushed a strand of dark hair behind her ear, and Rian noticed the shadows under her eyes. Biomechanics, kinesiology, the history of Ethonian movement arts, performance theory, everything in the Academy library, even tangentially related to what I'm trying to do here. Why? The question came out more abruptly than he intended. She looked at him like he'd asked why she breathed. "Because I'm not going to quit." There it was again, that stubborn fire he'd seen the first day. Rian had watched countless students face the wall of their own limitations. Most accepted it with varying degrees of grace. A few tried to push through with raw determination and burned out within weeks. Jenna was doing something different. She was studying the wall, measuring it, looking for handholds. "Show me the sequence we worked on yesterday," he said, moving to the sound system controls. Soft Ethonian music filled the hall, not the complex symphonies used for performances, but simple rhythm patterns designed for foundational training. Jenna moved to the center of the floor and assumed the starting position. She began to move Dot. It wasn't good, exactly. Her transitions were still too forceful, her landings imprecise. She overcompensated on the turns and under-rotated on the leaps. By technical standards, a first-year student would have performed the sequence with more refinement, but something had changed. Rian circled her slowly, watching not just her movements, but the intention behind them. She wasn't fighting the gravity anymore. She was negotiating with it, testing what it would allow. When she rose into an arabesque and felt herself lifting too high, she didn't panic. She extended the line of her body, using the extra height to create a shape impossible on Earth. When her landing from a small jump sent her sliding, she incorporated the slide into the next movement, turning error into innovation. "Stop," he said. She froze, breathing hard, and he saw the flash of defensiveness in her eyes. She thought he was going to criticize. 2 weeks ago, he would have. "Do that again," Rian said. The section after the third transition. But this time, lean into the slide instead of trying to stop it. Confusion flickered across her face, but she moved back to position. This time, when she landed and began to slide, she bent into it, letting momentum carry her across the floor in a low glide that became a pivot. then a rise that used the redirected energy to lift her higher, that she could have jumped from a static position. It was rough. It was unconventional. It was, Rian realized with a jolt of recognition, actually creative. How did you think of that? He asked. I didn't. Jenna was staring at her own feet like they'd betrayed her. I just felt what the floor wanted to do and went with it. That, Rian said quietly, is the beginning of actual artistry. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. Really? He should have maintained professional distance. Should have offered measured encouragement without excessive praise. Should have remembered that she was a student, a human, someone who would return to Earth when the exchange program ended in less than 3 months. Really, he said, and smiled a genuine expression he hadn't worn in the practice halls for longer than he cared to admit. The sound of the hall door opening shattered the moment. Rian turned to find Myra Salang standing in the entrance, her crystalline features arranged in an expression of delicate surprise. Rian, she said, moving into the hall with the kind of ethereal grace that had made her one of Stellara's most celebrated performers. I didn't realize you'd started scheduling private sessions so early. Or did I misremember when our faculty meeting begins? Faculty meeting. Rian checked his chronometer and suppressed a curse. He'd completely lost track of time. It starts in 10 minutes. I was just finishing. I can see what you are finishing. Myra's gaze moved to Jenna with the assessing look of a former principal dancer evaluating new competition. Though what competition could there be? Jenna was still struggling with basics that every Ethonian child mastered by age 7. Still, something in Myra's expression made Rian step slightly closer to Jenna. A protective instinct he didn't examine too closely. Jenna Torres, he said. This is Myra Saline, instructor of advanced kinetic composition. It's an honor, Jenna said, and her genuine enthusiasm seemed to catch Myra off guard. I watched recordings of your performance in Gravity's Dream at least 20 times. The way you used negative space in the third movement was incredible. Myra's expression softened fractionally. You studied my work? I've studied everyone's work. Well, everyone I could find recordings of. Ethonian movement vocabulary is so different from Earth dance that I figured I needed to basically start over. Conceptually speaking, Jenna was talking faster now, the way she did when passionate about something. The relationship between stillness and motion here, the way you use sustained elevation, not as a peak moment, but as a transitional state, it's completely inverted from Earth aesthetics. You understand that from recordings? Myra moved closer, genuinely curious now. Understanding and executing are different things. Jenna laughed ruefully, gesturing at herself. I can see what you're doing. I can analyze it theoretically. Actually making my body do it. That's where everything falls apart. Show me something, Myra said abruptly. Not a training sequence. Something you choreographed on Earth. Rian opened his mouth to object this wasn't appropriate. Jenna wasn't ready for evaluation by someone of Mira's standing, but Jenna was already moving to the center of the floor. No music, she said. The piece was designed for silence. It's called Wait. She began to move, and Rian felt his breath catch. It was nothing like Ethonian dance, where they valued sustained flow and elegant extensions. Jenna's choreography was sharp, grounded, full of sudden drops and powerful rebounds. On Ethon Prime, in low gravity, the movements should have looked absurd. All that force with nothing to push against. Instead, it was fascinating. Every jump became a barely controlled flight. Every landing sent ripples through the responsive floor that Jenna incorporated into the next movement. The power that would have been grounded on Earth became something else here, not delicate or refined, but raw and visceral and completely unique. She finished in a deep crouch, breathing hard. and looked up at them with vulnerable uncertainty. Myra was silent for a long moment. Then, "That was the ugliest beautiful thing I've ever seen." Jenna's face fell. "No," Myra said quickly, raising a hand. "I mean that as the highest compliment. Rian, you see this?" "I see it." And he did. He saw exactly what Myra was seeing, the beginning of something entirely new. "She's not trying to become Ethonian," Myra continued, circling Jenna the way Rian had earlier. "She can't. Her body won't allow it. But what if that's not the point? What if instead of teaching her our dance, we help her discover what human dance becomes in low gravity?" "That's not the academy curriculum," Rian said, but his mind was already racing ahead, seeing possibilities. "The academy curriculum is designed for Ethonian students." Mira turned to face him fully, and he recognized the expression in her eyes. It was the same look she'd worn 8 years ago when they'd been partners, when they'd pushed each other to take risks that transformed their performances from technically perfect to genuinely meaningful. Before artistic differences and more personal complications had ended both their partnership and their relationship. The Interstellar Arts Initiative isn't about making everyone dance the same way, Myra continued. It's about discovering what happens when different artistic traditions collide. She's going to fail if you keep trying to make her into something she can't be. But if you help her become something new. Jenna was looking between them, clearly trying to follow the subtext beneath their words. "I'm right here, you know, and I'm still confused about whether I just got insulted or complimented." Rian laughed, surprising himself. "Complimented. Definitely complimented." He turned to Mira. "You're right. But the faculty meeting will survive without us for once. Or rather, without you. I'll make your excuses." Mira moved toward the door, then paused. "Rian, don't waste this. She's something special, even if neither of you can see it yet." The door closed behind her, leaving Rian alone with Jenna in the pre-dawn light. "What just happened?" Jenna asked. "I think," Rian said slowly, "we just received permission to break every rule in the Academy handbook." He moved to the sound system, pulling up a different music file. "Tell me about Earth Dance. Not the theory you've been reading. Tell me what it feels like." She hesitated, then began to speak. About weight and momentum. About using the floor not as something to escape, but as a partner to push against. About power and control, and the satisfaction of a landing that you earned with every muscle in your body. Rian listened, and as she talked, he began to understand not just what she was trying to do, but why it mattered. Ethonian dance was about transcendence, about escaping physical limitation. Earth dance was about embracing it, celebrating what bodies could do within constraint. "Show me again," he said. "The piece called Wait, but this time I'm going to dance with you." "You?" She looked shocked. "But you're curious." He moved to face her, assuming a starting position from his own performance background, and possibly making a terrible professional decision. But Myra was right. You're not going to find what you're looking for by dancing alone. You need a partner who understands both worlds. You don't understand Earth dance. "No," he agreed. "But I understand you. And maybe that's enough to start." He extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Jenna took it. Her grip was stronger than any Ethonian's, her skin warmer, her palm slightly rough from years of Earth-standard training. Rian felt the difference between them in that touch, not just species or worlds, but entire philosophies of movement made physical. "Ready?" he asked. "No," Jenna said honestly. "But let's do it anyway." They began to move dot. It was chaos at first, their bodies speaking different languages, their instincts pulling in opposite directions. Rian lifted where Jenna wanted to drop. She pushed when he wanted to flow. Their timing was wrong, their spacing confused. Everything technically terrible. But somewhere in the third sequence, something clicked. Rian stopped trying to lead in the traditional Ethonian way and instead responded to Jenna's weight, using his low-gravity strength to catch her powerful movements and redirect them. She stopped apologizing for her force and instead let him transform it into something neither of them could create alone. When they finished, they were both breathing hard, standing close enough that Rian could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, could feel the heat radiating from her Earth-evolved metabolism. That was ... double quotes, Jenna started. Terrible, Rian finished. Awkward. Technically disastrous. Yeah, she was smiling. Want to try again? He should have said no. Should have remembered professional boundaries. The inevitable end of her exchange program. The impossibility of anything more than a student-teacher relationship. Yes, Rian said instead, and didn't let go of her hand. Outside the practice hall, Ethon Prime's sun was rising, painting the crystal spires in shades of rose and gold. And inside, two dancers from different worlds began the complicated choreography of falling toward each other, pulled by a gravity that had nothing to do with physics.